All right, and we begin with the latest on that monster blizzard that buried much of eastern Newfoundland. Ottawa says help is on the way, and it is sending the military to help with the lengthy task of cleaning up after the storm dropped a massive amount of snow on the eastern part of the island. Ottawa is deploying the military units at the request of Newfoundland and Labrador, and Premier Dwight Ball is going to be addressing the public shortly. Now, people in St. John's will need all the help they can get, as it's going to be a big job. People are starting to dig out on their own, but there are mountains of snow to remove after that blizzard dropped more than 70 centimeters on southeastern parts of the province. Now, a state of emergency, as we mentioned, has been extended into Sunday and will possibly carry over into Monday. Now, we know that the Prime Minister is also promising assistance. On Twitter, he had this to say about the situation, saying that help is on the way. Ministers Bill Blair and Harjit Sajjan and Seamus O'Regan are working with the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador to make sure people in that province get the support they need. We'll get through this together. And as we mentioned, the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, Dwight Ball, now joins us from Deer Lake. Thank you so much for joining us here today. So we did see that request was put in, and the federal government appears to have answered that call for assistance. What's your reaction to that right now?
Yes, they have answered, and we've been engaged with the federal government officials and ministers now for quite a few hours. We're anticipating this yesterday. This has been an extraordinary amount of snowfall, so it required an extraordinary response, and that is what we requested, and that is what we got from the federal government.
Now, Premier, do you have any sense right now of how exactly it is that the military reservists who are already in place might actually be able to be deployed to relieve some of the duties of those who've been taking care of snow removal up to this point?
Yeah, it's a good point, because we've had some great response from the current employees that we have throughout our province, but they're getting tired. They've been at this a long time, and the work's tough. And so right now, what we've asked the federal government is to do is send in resources that would complement the great work that's been done, and they have agreed to do that. I can give you, lots of examples. We need to be able to change out some of our tiring healthcare workers that have been on the job now for up to 30 hours. And so what we need is we need those roads cleared, and we need the pathways, even to individual houses, that they would be cleared as well. So in case of emergency, some of the seniors that we have in their homes right now, who are feeling the stress and the anxiety of feeling that if they were in an emergency, they would not be able to get out. So we want to put those extra resources on the ground to support our seniors, to support some of the people that are living alone and would need the help to get their driveways cleared, but also when we change out shifts and getting our employees back to work in a safe manner.
Premier, when we were hearing from Minister O'Regan, certainly he discussed the fact that there had been a conversation between the two of you, at least yesterday. Wondering how long those discussions have sort of been taking place, as we know we've all been watching closely that this blizzard was expected to come and dump extraordinary amounts of snow in some parts of the province. So how long have those discussions been underway? And also in terms of top priorities you guys tried to hash out while you were having those discussions, wondering what they might be.
Yeah, so yesterday we had a severe storm. We all know that. So early this morning, once our crews got back to work, we immediately started looking at the assessment of what would have been required, and in anticipation of that we would actually reach out to the federal government. So this is how the discussion started. And then we start looking at and speaking with our communities. As an example, you've mentioned already, the mayor of St. John's is one example, but other local officials as well. So just reaching out and to try and determine and refine what the request would look like. So there is no question about it that the extra resources that the federal government could put on the ground in Newfoundland and Labrador will be an important complement to the work that's being done. So as I just mentioned, I gave you a few examples, but there will be many more as we complete the assessments that are happening in our communities and in our province over the number of hours and throughout the night.
And, you know, part of the state of emergency that has been declared, of course, is for the safety of the public. And we know that when there had been some previous storms in the province during this winter season, just in the past few weeks, really, that there had been at least one tragedy involving a pedestrian. And it was because the snow removal, for example, on the sidewalks wasn't quite there. So some individuals were walking then on the road. Wondering what sort of other scenarios it is that people are keeping an eye out for when we're talking about this declaration of a state of emergency and sort of the dangers that exist. I do believe, and perhaps you have an update on this, that there was one individual who had been missing as well.
There is an individual, a young 26-year-old young man that is missing right now, and we've had the responses in through search and rescue, and the federal government is involved in that as well. But you raise a good point when you talk about, you know, people walking and traveling our roads. So it's important right now that the state of emergency stays in place until we get our streets and roads, you know, safe to travel. And so we'll be considering now over the next, few hours, you know, government services, when they would be restored, when people would go back to school. But it's important now to make sure that we have all the resources that are available to us to complement the workforce that's already in place. And before we make the final decisions when the state of emergencies would be lifted, we just want to make sure that roads are safe to travel on, both for pedestrians and for the vehicles that would travel those roads. So it's important that when people get back to work, they can get back to work under safe conditions.
All right, so I guess you're still assessing how long that state of emergency will be in place as it stands right now. We know that reports it could be in effect until Monday morning, but something you will revisit.
Absolutely. We're analyzing, assessing this, literally on an hourly basis with our departments, but with the communities that are involved in all this as well. Much of the work is being done in the communities, and a lot of the work are being provided through the major thoroughfares through the Department of Transportation works within our province here. So there's a lot going on in Newfoundland and Labrador right now as we've begun the cleanup and making sure that the roads are safe to travel on and the necessary services can be provided, when those roads are safe to travel.